RFK Jr. vows to give black farmers $5 billion in reparations. I remember when I kind of liked RFK. I kind of liked RFK, not necessarily because I agree with him, because he wasn't in the Democrat Party, but he was on the left and he was a bit more reasonable. This is not great. There is a exculpation. There is a bit of a what's the word I'm looking for? A mitigation to how bad this sounds. But anyway, let's read on.
No, I saw a little bit about this. Yeah, we were kind of like, oh, you're a leftist. We can get along sometimes, but not on this one, homie.
Yeah, this is not good. So
he did talk about reparations months ago, by the way. Yeah, he's been talking about this for a while, but this is extensive.
It's in that case, it's kind of changed then from me saying that he would be a good replacement for the current Democrat establishment to he'll be a good spoiler for Biden's vote pool.
Yep. I just hope he spoils it. That's all I want at this point. Spoil that shit.
Remember, by the way, all the polls that are saying that Biden loses against Trump, they're comparing Biden to Trump. They're not factoring in a third party spoiling the vote count. Or if they are, they probably have it even worse.
They usually actually are. Well,
okay.
No,
I see mostly like direct head-to-head polls. They're the most common ones that compare two candidates.
Oh, the ones...
That's not even accurate these days. Because you've got a third party that might actually get supposed these days.
I'm not actually sure if I've seen ones that have accounted for third-party variants. I don't know. Actually, I have no idea if they've accounted for RFK.
So last time, Biden and Trump were roughly even in the polls before it started. And the Democrat, which was obviously not true, the Democrats had to rig their arse off to make it look like Biden won. Now, Trump is quite a long way ahead of Biden, and that's, I think, just in the head-to-head polls, never mind how much of a spoiler RFK... If RFK gets 2% of the vote in the swing states, that is colossal.
They're going to lynch him, by the way.
That's a huge difference. Even just 2%. It's a huge difference. So they're going to have to rig probably twice as hard as they did in 2020 to offset it. Now, they are bussing in loads of people, but will that even be enough? And to be fair,
the Democrats also love to kill the Kennedys. So I think that they'll be more than happy to murder this dude if he takes 2% of the vote from Biden.
Yeah. Jack, was that for 2020? Jack's saying Biden was ahead of Trump in the polls, and I believe he means in 2020. The final results were 51 for it. Yeah, okay, fair enough. So yeah, even more so. So again, like a little bit of hope with obviously there's mitigations here, but a little bit of hope. Trump is way ahead, where before he was looking behind, even though he still, as far as we can tell from the rigging, in fact was more popular.
Even though that polling was all kinds of biased.
Yeah, clearly. Even now. So the Democrats are not happy. And there's actually an article we have today about USA Today is saying no more Biden. We'll get to that in a minute. But first, RFK. Yeah. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has made a campaign promise to black farmers that will give them $5 billion in reparations should he win the 2024 presidential election. Kennedy, a one-time Democrat turned third-party insurgent, was speaking on a podcast with John Boyd Jr., founder of the National Black Farmers Association. Boyd Jr. is behind an effort to sue the Biden admin for watering down a proposed debt relief program aimed at helping people of color and socially disadvantaged farmers and ranchers in the agriculture industry. So, racial redistribution of wealth then. Yep. Disgusting.
Yep.
The farmers did not receive the relief package as the money was stalled in courts due to white farmers complaining that debt relief infringes on their constitutional rights.
Well, it sure does.
Well, it infringes on their the rights granted by the Civil Rights Act, I think.
Yes.
This is certainly wrong. Whether there is a technical legal basis to say it, it certainly is wrong. Government should not be doing it. Frankly, questionable whether they should even be doling this out anyway, but this is clearly wrong.
The government redistributing, the U.S. government redistributing wealth is not the point of democracy, okay? Then you're a socialist or communist system.
Really.
No, it's not. Yeah. Well, it is the point of government if you're a socialist or communistic system, I suppose. But we're not supposed to be that. Yeah. I know you would love for us to be that, but we're not. So the point of the government is not to redistribute wealth. The end. Nothing else matters. So, I don't really care.
Yeah. I was going to say, Yeah. So again, little bit of a white pill that this stuff can be stopped, even if you are just doing it through the courts. Even if you have a relatively small number of people opposing it, it can be stopped, especially along the lines of principles we've already established in law, which not all of them are okay, but a lot of them are. So this was stopped, and now RFK is promising to bring it back. How, mate? How?
Yep.
How? It's not. It was already stopped before. How are you gonna? Because he knows he's not gonna win. It's just striking red meat. Which is unfortunate. It's quite tactical.
Yes, exactly. It's tactical. 100%.
Kennedy promised he will get rid of the people who watered down the provision in the USDA and get that money for black farmers when he's in the White House.
Oh, come the fuck on. First of all, you're not, even if let's imagine the fantasy world where RFK becomes president, which is not happening. You're not going to do it. Because you're never going to fucking do it. This is all bullshit. This is why I hate democracy, dude. This is all performative nonsense. Now, you know my contentions with it is that I think every single person who is a politician is a lying dirtbag. But am I wrong in that? Are they not all lying dirtbags?
The thing is that a lot of them, almost all of them, are. But anyone in a position of power has to be, because it's power politics. At a certain level, you have to be. Any leader would be, even leaders you.
Yes, and look what happens when you're not. You're Ron Paul. You're Ron Paul. You get into a certain level of power, but you can't excel or achieve beyond that because you're too honest. Then you become Ron Paul. That might be
the reason. Like the reason is that he can't work with people who are themselves operating in power politics, so the collective wins. Unfortunately, this is not a problem with democracy. It maybe is more visible in democracy. It's just a problem of human nature. At a certain level, it becomes power politics. Now, our job
is all
you shouldn't expect
power politics. All politics
not necessarily,
are power politics.
but most of it is, yes. In some sense, it is, but that doesn't mean you can't be honest. Indeed, we're seeing more success today with honest politicians than at any time in the last 30 years.
Sure.
But I was going to say something about that. So before we went on with that.
Sorry, all politics are power politics, and then we were back before that was
on
Paul,
sorry,
and then back before that was.
No, it was between Ron Paul and power politics. I forgot what I was going to say. Maybe I'll remember it in a minute. Let's continue for now, though. Quote, that $5 billion is not money. That is an entitlement, he told Boyd Jr. It's money that was a loan that the black farmers were entitled to way back when and was stolen from them through discrimination. Is it really? Now, if this is some sort of historical thing, then maybe there's a reason it was prevented.
Didn't we already deal with this 150 years ago? Now, I'm not saying that 5 acres and a mule was a correct way to deal with slavery, but that's what was offered at the time.
Maybe
or to go back to deportation or to be deported. Those were your options. You could take 5 acres and a mule.
Good news! You're going home! Yay!
To Liberia. 40 acres. 40 acres. Excuse me.
Zephyr says, do you think RFK is doing this to secure the win for Trump if they try anything? Honestly, it's a plausible thing to consider because this is probably going to help Trump. Because now Trump, anyone that was near the middle but is leaning right, won't be voting for RFK after this. This and other similar things, most likely.
Let's spend some more money while we're in a recession.
That's also a good point. It's very possible, Zephyr, that RFK is working directly with Trump. But honestly, no, I suspect this is truly what he believes and would advocate for. I suspect that he's an honest man.
Yeah, I think
he just has some stupid ideas.
I actually think RFK is genuine about this, and he's just an idiot in terms of the optics for this. This is not going to fly. Even black people, let's be clear about this. Do you think other black people in the United States want to pay for black landowners to get a huge payout from the U.S. government using their taxpayer dollars? Just saying. In a recession. You think that's going to fly? Let me base part of my campaign on spending your money on shit that you're not going to see any benefit from. Including other black people. What are the black people who own land like this? They're already rich. I mean, from the perspective of an inner city black person, right?
Well, anyway, we'll continue with this. I think probably we get the idea, but I am curious what this is based on. Kennedy has several programs attempting to outflank Biden from the left on reparations. The son of the ex-attorney general and nephew of the ex-president's campaign website, etc., end USDA's discrimination against black farmers and protect current landowners from... Is it discrimination if they're simply not being privileged? If they're not being given free extra shit? Is that discrimination?
Let's try... Here's the problem. Try to parse this shit out. Are you a black person whose family was historically discriminated against? Can you prove that? I need you to now go and take a DNA test and go find out whether or not your family was a slave or not, was part of the slave trade or not. You want to go do that? Because that's what they're requiring here. Otherwise, they're just saying that if you have a certain skin tone color, then you are eligible for this certain right. That is, by definition, racist. Yeah. It is by definition racist.
You're right that the standard that they're arguing for is for a specific group of people who, yes, they were black, but it was more that they were promised something. But the standard that they're using to determine who they're actually going to give it to is just the skin color. So yeah, you're right that's the two things are different. They shouldn't be.
It's racially discriminatory. Now, if you want to be like, only two people that we can definitively prove are the descendants of slaves. Sure, I don't approve of that either, but maybe we could argue that as being a little bit more, a little bit less, I suppose.
No. It's all retarded. Slaves themselves suffered. Their offspring had significantly improved lives compared to the slaves.
To Africa? Yeah.
Yeah. They have been blessed with being brought into Western civilizations for free with no merit requirements.
Absolutely. I agree. So you're here. Now, I know that let's be clear, blacks in America have been subject to discrimination over the course of hundreds of years, right? They have been Jim Crow, etc. Redlining laws, which, by the way, the Democrats still are in favor of and still engage in actively. Redlining, while saying that they don't do it, but they do. In fact, they actively do it. So you could say, like, well, we have some historical discrimination that puts you at a bad foot starting off in life. Not really, considering we also have all of these programs that benefit exclusively.
That's never been the issue.
I know. We all know this is. I'm trying to try and think of things from their ridiculous perspective. Yeah. So how could you in order to benefit these people, you would need to prove that they are the descendants of slaves. Have fun proving that. In terms of giving reparations, you can't be able to tie your family back to that. There are tons of black people in America who have absolutely no relationship to the slave trade whatsoever. Yeah. Who've been living here for what, 1 generation, 2 generations? You want and under this paradigm, they would give them all money as well. That's because what do you want to do? Because the other question is, do you want them to all take a bunch of genetic tests or something? I'm sure they do, just to get your genetics on the board. But you want to give people genetic tests so that you could find out whether or not someone was a product of slavery. I mean, like, you know, I had when I was in grad school, they give you like a buddy who's in doc school when you start out doc school. It's like, here's your buddy to help you deal with how to transition into doc school. And my doc school buddy... Did you say
doc's cool? Doxing isn't cool, Aiden.
Yeah, it's totally cool. Doctoral school. She was from Ghana, right? She was actually pretty cool. But like, would she, as an immigrant from Ghana, would she be willing to, would she receive this kind of stuff? I mean, this is the problem with this, like, just, I'm basing stuff off of your skin color.
No, that is a really good point, though, Aiden. If you had a situation where, like, when the left says we want to give black farmers this thing because of slavery, whoa, hold on there a second, just 1 second. Those are two different things. They are actually two different things. It's been often assumed that they're the same, but they're really not. If it's about them being black, then it's not about slavery. If it's about slavery, then it's not all blacks. You're going to make the distinction at that point. At that point, all they're doing is saying, "No, we're just going to give it to blacks because we hate whites, and we're going to use slavery as the wedge to make you feel bad about it to let us do it." No, that's too late. We already know what you're doing now. We're not going to let you do that. As far as we can. Pigsty says slavery worked for thousands of years. Then we brought into it. I think that wasn't the problem because blacks have been slaves before too, and still are in many places. The problem is that whoever it was exactly that brought blacks over to the US were a minority of those living in the US who did not agree with the general moral sense of Western people. Now, when it started, the opposition was not as great as it became, but perhaps living among it taught us how wrong it is. And we then basically roamed the world abolishing slavery wherever we could find it. That's how good, essentially, the people of the West are. Now, whoever it was that brought slaves into the US were a minority who did not agree with that. And so the problem was not the color of the slaves. The problem was the morality of the people in the society where the slaves were being taken. That was what was different. That's why slavery didn't work in the West, because we're literally too good to let it happen.
First of all, let's just give an 07 to the British Empire of being the culture that ended slavery. I don't know why, to this day, well, you know why, that England and Britain more broadly gets blamed for slavery to this day of being like a perpetuating slavery when we're the ones who ended it. But I mean the Anglosphere ended slavery and then went around the whole world and ended it everywhere else. Unbelievable. But still to this day, the Anglosphere is blamed for slavery as if we're not also the ones who ended it. That's absurdist. Because the whole point.
It's just absurd.
It's my favorite picture ever.
It's very good.
It's literally my favorite picture.
I think I first saw this when you shared it about 5 or 6 years ago.
Because I've shared it so many times. No. Britain invented this shit and also, well, no, they didn't invent slavery. They also shut it down. And it's unbelievable to me that the Anglosphere gets accused or gets blamed for slavery when the Anglosphere, mostly the British Empire and its colonies, are the ones that ended this shit. Are you out of your mind?
The way it is this. If you wish to delineate blame for slavery by the race of the slaveholders, okay, let's play that game. Whites have by far the best record. By far, no contest, as also being the only race who, essentially by the entire race, abolished it, even abolished it in other places. Asians, pretty poor record. Even today, you could argue that there's slavery there, but they have the second best, still a long way behind. Middle Easterners still doing it regularly, less than in the past, but still doing it regularly. Blacks, hard to tell. There's not enough civilization there to really make an assessment, but they were the original slavers we got the black slaves from. I don't know if they probably are still doing it. In fact, they probably are. Probably they're doing it the most by far. You just can't tell because they're not civilized enough to have structures to classify it as slavery.
Very true.
Whites have by far the best record on slavery. If anyone ever whines to you about whites, tell them that, and then explain to them the history. Explain to them that the black slaves were sold by other blacks. It was not racial. They don't believe it.
It was, yes. They just, where do you think the slave trade came from? They think in their fantasy thinking brains that whites just came into Africa and picked them all up in a big bushel and took them back to America. Other blacks sold them.
We let them do the gathering. We're not going to go in the jungle. Are you serious? No, let the locals do it. Obviously.
Let them do it. This is the obvious white man's way of doing things. Like, oh, you could bring them here. Like, we don't have to do that. Unbelievable nonsense. And it's why, like, how's Liberia doing right now?
I love how even the leftist perspective on how evil whites are also paints them as the most successful and accomplished.
Well, it has to be.
Yeah.
Because how are we able to succeed so well? Apparently, random chance. Mm-hmm. It was just a random chance that we conquered the planet, I suppose. Yeah, sure, that sounds like a random statistic to me. I'm not talking about like racial superiority or anything like that. I don't believe in that shit. But like, why does the left apparently believe in that? That they think that they apparently think, according to their own dialectic, that whites are so vastly superior to everyone else that we conquered the entire world and then we need to be held responsible for it because of our inherent superiority. I'm not saying
we conquered the entire world, but other races built America, obviously.
Other races built America, of course. But to me, it's fascinating that they will say those two things that that are inherently contradictory. Whites are shit, they're garbage, they've never invented anything, but also they conquered the entire planet and they need to be held responsible for that. Which one is it, dingus? Try to answer that question. It's crazy. But that's the whole thing that's absurdist about this reparations conversation. You can't talk about shit people's ancestors did and hold common everyday people today responsible for that.
So one of the less well-known, but I think most interesting, probably the most interesting, Sargon debate from years ago. Maybe you remember this, Aiden. It was against a woman.
I probably do.
Like a clearly like feminist, like frumpy old white woman who said, and Sargon just said like casually, yeah, the whites bought black slaves from Africa, from other blacks.
Remember
and this woman went nuts and was like, that's wrong and racist and evil. I'm ending this debate right. And she ended the debate. That was it.
Mm-hmm.
Sargon said that. And it's true. So yeah, there are people that just absolutely cannot contend with the facts of how slavery happened and yet build their entire moral framework around hating whites for what they didn't actually do in it.
It's so much of it is I remember that debate. I remember that happening because it was really funny. But a lot of it is white guilt. It's this leftist white guilt thing, white savior complex, which lead into each other. I've done research on this. White guilt and white savior complex are, I think, inexorably linked. Of pretending to hate yourself and also seeing yourself as the savior are inexorably linked concepts. Of, oh, I'm a bad person, so I have to save everybody by doing I don't know, X, Y, Z, whatever. It's really stupid, but that appears to be their mindset.
I think it's both just different forms of virtue signaling, but it's the same mechanic. It's not even whites. Just that whites have sort of developed to have a specific moral tendencies, which are usually a good idea, but can easily be misled. I think the what I said before about the tendencies of Africans, in reality, it's not a one-to-one thing. It's like the proportion of whites who would act like that is a percentage, and the proportion of blacks who'd act like that is a higher percentage. But it's not one-to-one. There's certainly
when you look at the data on it in terms of in-group preference, white's the lowest for in-group preference.
Yes. Which I don't know how much of that is propagandistic conditioning for the last 50 to 100 years, and how much of it is just how we are. Because it's it's a sort of maternal or paternal instinct to when a group is so powerful to want to bring in lesser creatures to see if they can shake things up, change things, improve things. There's some aspect of someone else that we can weave in. Because that's sort of how things work. You reach a stasis and then you find something that changes things and wobbles them about a bit. But then in the end, you reach a different stasis, which is probably higher, as long as you haven't lost too much of what made you good in the first place. Which is why I think that the whole culture war, the mass importation thing, as long as whites and Europeans and whatever don't become too much of a minority, don't die off entirely, we will ultimately benefit from it. But it will take a while and it won't be pleasant to go through it. But we will ultimately benefit from it.
Yeah, it's totally worth your entire town being full of rapists so you can have a curry shop.
It's obviously gone way too far. It's obviously gone way too far. But if the European sensibility, European derived sensibility, including Americans, does not die off entirely, then it probably will be better after this all ends. But to be honest, it's hard to say